Greetings, my dear viewers. It is I, Drehon, and welcome back to Pathfinder Hero Frame Blueprint. We take a look at some out-of-the-box sort of characters and see what they might look like within Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And today we are once again taking a look at the Toa from the LEGO Bionicle franchise. This time we are looking at 5 of the 10 secondary elements that a Toa can have within the Bionicle universe, or at least in the Matoran half of the Bionicle universe. There are 10 different secondary elements, but we are looking at 5 of them today. We are looking at plant life, lightning, iron, plasma, and psionics. Yes, psionics, psychic energy, that is an element within the Matoran universe. Sounds weird, but that is the case. So yeah, we are going to look at these 5 elements, and one thing that I forgot to mention in the last video, because it really didn't seem that important, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you here. Not only do each of the elemental types for the Toa have a color coordination, they have their own assigned color, but they also have an assigned gender. Plant life are male, lightning are female, and so on and so forth. There has only been one exception to this, and that is the Toa of Psionics by the name of Ord. That is because he was one of the first Toa ever created. And the great beings found Ord to be aggressive. Too aggressive for this element. So, after Ord was created, the great beings decided that from then on, any Matoran of psionics would be female. Ord's still around. He is actually in the story known as the Yesterday Quest, which is a after story of the events of Bionicle Stars. This is the first time that we actually see Ord, but he has been here this whole time, since he is one of the first Toa to have been created next to the Toa known as Helrix, though they weren't a part of the same group. So anyway, moving on with that. Last time, when we talked about the Toa, we had a basic idea of what they might be. We went with the ancestry of the android with the background of the otherworldly mission. And that is because all of the life on the Matoran universe planet, Spheris Magna? No, that wasn't it. Anyway, the MU, as it has been called, are 85% mechanical beings, with 15% of their bodies being organic. The muscles, the lungs, and other important organs are organic, while everything else about them is mechanical. And this was best represented in the ancestry of the android. So that is our basis. Now, if you're looking for more Bionicle content to help you figure out what your Bionicle character might be, I would definitely recommend taking a look at Imaginui Tales for the lore of Bionicle and its characters, and the Knowledge Tower for the science behind the Bionicle legend. This way you can, as a dungeon master, build up the world that you will have these characters be set in, or you can have some extra characters, some NPCs come in to sort of interact with the player characters. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right back into things. Getting right into the heritages. The first one I wanted to look at is the plant life element, and the heritage that best fits the Toa of plant life were the Ardande, which are the elemental geniekin of the element of wood, with the ancestry feat of Grove Harbored and Spring Soul being the most accurate representation for the element of plant life. Moving on to the Toa of Iron, it made the most sense to go with the elemental kin of metal, Talos, with the ancestry feat either being the Pharaoh's Soul or Reflective Defense. For lightning, this made the most sense of going with the Sylph, your ancestry feat being, of course, the Storm Soul. For the Toa of Plasma, you will go with the Ifrit, with the ancestry feat of Bright Soul. And then, of course, you have the Psionics, which, again, seems a little bit weird, but I think the best fit for this type of Toa is going to be the Aphorite, seeing as their coloration is blue and gold, and Cobalt is a bluish color, and is a color of skin that the Aphorites are able to possess. For your ancestry feat, we're just going with the normal android ancestry feat known as Emotionless. I decided to go with this because it has been stated in lore that the Matoran of psionics have a ability to resist certain mental powers. And this skill is actually able to be learned by the other Toa. As a Order of Matanui member had been studying the Matoran of psionics to try to learn this ability to block out any mental intrusions. And Emotionless just seemed like the perfect fit for this specific skill. Next is alternative backgrounds. Now, we don't actually have much information on a lot of these different type of Matoran, so some of this is mostly just speculation based off what I could find on the specific Matoran. For the Matoran of plant life, the backgrounds that made the most sense were the Dendrologist, the elementally infused, using the element of wood, the field medic, since apparently the Matoran of plant life are excellent healers, even more so than the Gar Matoran, the herbalist, the plant whisperer, and the root worker. For your Matoran of iron, it made the most sense to go with the alloy smith, the artisan, disciple of the gear, elementally infused with the element of metal, gold hand arms dealer, gunsmith, mechanic, miner, and tinker. And this is because, according to the lore, a lot of Matoran of Iron were a part of a group known as Ninra Ghosts, which had a total of 48 members, with only some being Phi Matoran. And according to my research, that means somewhere between 2 and 50%. So at a maximum, there are 24 Phi Matoran in the Ninra Ghosts. Anyway, not important. What is important is why I mentioned the Ninra Ghosts. The Ninra Ghosts are a group of Matoran who were in charge of making weapons. And they were responsible for making a great deal of weapons that can be found within the Matoran universe, including these launchers and blasters. Zamor launchers, the Ghost blasters, and the Ninran blasters. As well as being the Matoran who created the Exo-Toa, a exosuit that the Toa had used to defeat the Borok Queens during the first outing of this franchise. So yeah, these individuals are pretty darn important. For your Toa of Lightning, it is said that the Matoran of Lightning are very boisterous, energetic, outgoing, very sociable, more so than the Gar Matoran were. So for alternative backgrounds, I think the Barker and the Free Spirit would make the most sense. Now we're getting into the Matoran that don't have much information beyond their elemental capabilities, and that would be the Matoran and Toa of Plasma and Psionics. Literally, there was not much here. For the Matoran of Plasma and Toa of Plasma, it is stated that Toa of Plasma were very reluctant to use their elemental abilities, since being able to create plasma had the capabilities of melting most objects within the Matoran universe. So they were afraid that they could harm or even kill their opponents, and they did not want that. Mostly because of the Toa code that they followed, where they did not want to kill their opponents. There are some Toa that don't go with this code, Toa Helrix being one such Toa. And there was even a Toa of, I think it was Sonics, who was forced to kill a Makuta because he was backed against a wall. And he even felt ashamed of killing the Makuta. But he had no choice. But that's besides the point. The point is the Toa of Plasma did not really like using their elemental properties because they saw themselves as a threat to the lives around them. But I can see the Toa of Plasma using their abilities to be alloy smiths. Kind of like workers of the Ninra ghosts, because that sort of makes sense. You want to be able to melt down the different alloys so that they can be used in weapons and armor. But that's mostly speculation. Another background that made the most sense was going with the elementally infused fire. For psionics, the only background that seemed to make the most sense was the Mystic Seer, as everything else didn't really seem to fit. Now, again, this is up to you what background you choose for your Toa, but this seems to be the most fitting backgrounds, despite the lack of lore on these individuals. Moving on to classes. Much like last time, the Magus, the Fighter, the Gunslinger, the Archer, the Dual Weapon Warrior, the Swordmaster, and the Horizon Walker seem to be the best fitting for these Toa. But each element does have their own uniqueness. So we'll go ahead and go over those unique characteristics real quick. For Toa of Plant Life, it makes sense to go with the Druid class, the Herbalist dedication, the Kineticist going off of the element of wood, and the Sorcerer with the Elemental bloodline once again going into that element of wood. For your Toa of Iron, the Kineticist and the Sorcerer going into that Elemental metal once again makes the most sense for these Toa. For the Toa of Lightning, the Kineticist going off of the element of wind makes the most sense. Yeah, this is surprising, but the Kineticist of wind does have a couple of feats that are based in electricity. A Lightning Dash, Storm Spiral, Ghosts in the Storm, and Crowned in Tempest Fury. So that is definitely some options that you can go with. Next is Plasma. Once again, we're going into that fire element with the Kineticist and the Elemental Bloodline Sorcerer. For Psionics, the only two that made the most sense here, and this will probably define the Toa of Psionics here, more than the skills and background will, and that is going to be the class of Psychic and the dedication feat of Psychic Duelist. Now for our skill feats. Like I said, with the backgrounds, there was not much information to go off of with these different Matoran and Toa, so I did my best with what little information I had. For the skill feats, we have the following for each of the elements. For the Toa of Plant Life, we have Advanced First Aid, Combat Climber, Efficient Explorer, Forager, Natural Medicine, Quick Climb, and Root Magic. For Iron, we have Communal Crafting, Cooperative Crafting, Craft Anything, Impeccable Crafting, Inventor, Specialty Crafting, and Quick Repair. For Lightning, we have Encouraging Words, Glad Hand, and Predict Weather. This one was actually a bit of a stretch, since they do have the element of lightning. They most likely have some of their Matoran learn how to predict the weather so that they could recharge their elemental energy. For the element of Plasma, just being there is probably intimidating to a lot of foes, given the history that users of Plasma have. So intimidating glare seems like a skill that a Toa of Plasma could use effectively. Another one would be Risky Surgery. This is just going off of the basis of cauterizing a open wound and nothing more. Again, just speculation here. More speculation being since Toa of Plasma are very similar to the Matoran and Toa of Fire, and in that they will live in similar locations to those Matoran and Toa, you could even go off of the Matoran and Toa of Fire's traits that we went over in the last video. Again, speculation. We don't really have much going off of the Matoran or Toa of Plasma, other than they have the ability to not get blinded by bright light, which is hilarious. Next is Psionics. The Orosight skill feat and the skill feat of Read Psychometric Resonance makes the most sense, and are probably the only two skill feats that would work for a Toa of Psionics for just a generic Toa of this element. And of course, much like last time, skill feats that will work with any Toa are going to be Terrain Stalker, Terrain Expertise, Wall Jump, Wilderness Spotter, and Armored Stealth. And with that being said, that is all the time I have for you today. What did you think? Which Toa is your favorite? What element would you use in a campaign? Let me know in the comment section below. And are there any Toa that you would like me to do specifically as a character build in the future? Until next time, this has been Drayhan, and I am offline.